The slap cracked through the parade ground like a gunshot. 5,000 people standing in formation, soldiers, officers, medical staff, city officials, and every single one of them heard it. The sound carved through the humid Georgia air, silencing conversations, stopping breath. A senior officer's hand hung in the air for just a second too long, trembling slightly, as if even he couldn't believe what he'd just done. The woman he struck didn't fall, didn't cry out, didn't even step back. Blood appeared at the corner of her mouth, a thin, dark line against pale skin. Her nurse's uniform was crisp, white, perfectly pressed. Her hands stayed at her sides, her eyes, gray and steady, locked onto his face with an expression that wasn't fear or shock or even anger. It was patience. "You're dead weight," Major Garrett Lansing said, voice loud enough to carry across the formation. "You don't belong here." The woman, Claire Whitmore, according to the name tag clipped to her chest, tilted her head slightly, just enough. Then she spoke, and her voice was so calm it made the heat feel colder. "Permission to retrieve my sealed personnel file, sir." Lansing blinked. Confusion flickered across his face, then irritation, then something else. Something that looked almost like panic. But it was too late. Somewhere in the third row of the formation, a young lieutenant went completely white. His hand started shaking. He whispered something to the man beside him, and that man's eyes went wide. Claire Whitmore didn't look like a victim. She looked like someone who'd been waiting. Tid. If you want to see how far a story like this can travel, how far the truth can spread when it finally gets told, stay with me until the end. Like this video. Drop a comment with the city you're watching from. Let's see how far we can take this. 48 hours earlier, Claire Whitmore was nobody. She showed up for her shift at Ironvale Military Hospital at 05:45, same as always. The hallways were still dim, the overhead lights flickering in that tired way institutional buildings had when they'd been running too long without maintenance. Her shoes squeaked softly on the linoleum. She nodded to the night shift nurse heading out, got a distracted wave in return, and clocked in at the nurse's station without a word. Nobody looked up. Claire was used to that. She'd been reassigned to Ironvale 6 months ago after what the paperwork called a medical separation from active duty. The reality was messier, but the file was thin and nobody asked questions. She worked the morning rotations in the ICU, helped with post-op recovery, occasionally got pulled into the ER when things got busy. She was competent, quiet, kept her head down. The other staff didn't know what to make of her. "She's got that look," one of the younger nurses had said once, not realizing Claire was in the supply room behind her. "Like she's seen some things, but she won't talk about it, so I don't know. Maybe she just burned out." "Burned out or washed out?" another voice had replied. "Either way, she's not cut out for the real work anymore." Claire had finished counting gauze pads, logged the inventory, and walked past them without acknowledging a word. That morning, she moved through her rounds with the same efficiency. Checked vitals, updated charts, adjusted an IV drip for a post-surgical patient who was complaining about pain but whose numbers said otherwise. She stayed an extra 20 minutes to sit with an older man recovering from a stroke because his daughter couldn't make it in until the afternoon, and he kept asking what time it was. "It's 7:30, Mr. Calloway," Claire said for the third time, her voice soft. "Oh." He frowned, then looked at her. "You're a good girl." "Thank you." "You remind me of someone." Claire smiled faintly. "I get that a lot." By the time she finished, the day shift was in full swing. The ICU charge nurse, a sharp-eyed woman named Dolores, who'd been at Ironvale for 15 years, was already barking orders at the residents. Claire slipped past her, heading for the break room to grab coffee before the next wave hit. She poured a cup. Black. No sugar. "Whitmore." Claire turned. Dolores stood in the doorway, arms crossed, looking annoyed. "You're being pulled," Dolores said. "Pulled where?" "Big ceremony today. Some kind of joint training event with the National Guard and the state emergency response teams. They're short on medical standby staff. You're going." Claire frowned. "I'm scheduled in ICU until—" "I know what you're scheduled for. They don't care. You're warm, you're certified, you're going. Report to the South Lot in 30 minutes. Dolores left before Claire could say anything else. Claire stood there for a moment, coffee in hand, staring at the empty doorway. Then she sighed, drank half the cup in 3 long swallows, and went to get her gear. The south lot was chaos. Trucks lined up in neat rows. Personnel moving in every direction, radios crackling. Someone shouting about a missing equipment manifest. The sun was already brutal, baking the asphalt until the air shimmered. Claire squinted against the glare and found the staging area for medical staff, a cluster of folding tables under a canvas tent that provided almost no shade. A young private with sweat stains under his arms waved her over. "You Whitmore?" "Yes. You're with Team 3. Over there." He pointed vaguely toward a group of people in scrubs and fatigues standing near an ambulance. "You'll be on standby during the ceremony. Probably won't need you, but protocol says we have to have medical on site." Claire nodded and walked over. Team 3 turned out to be 2 paramedics, a physician's assistant, and another nurse who looked about 22 and visibly nervous. The PA introduced himself as Rivas. The paramedics didn't bother. The young nurse stammered her name, Emma, and immediately started asking questions. "Have you done this before? I've never been to one of these. Is it always this hot? Do people actually pass out?" "Sometimes," Claire said. "Oh my God." Rivas glanced at Claire, then at Emma. "You'll be fine. Just stay hydrated and keep your kit close. If someone drops, we move fast, assess, and get them out of the sun. Standard heat protocol." Emma nodded too quickly, like she was trying to convince herself. Claire set her kit down and checked the contents. Everything was there. She closed it and straightened, scanning the area. The ceremony was supposed to start at 1000 hours. It was 0830 now. That left 90 minutes for things to go wrong in small, preventable ways that nobody would notice until it was too late. She looked at the sky. Clear. No clouds. Temperature already pushing into the mid-80s, and it wasn't even 9 yet. "Rivas," Claire said quietly. He looked over. "How long is the ceremony?" 2 hours, give or take. Why? Standing formation the whole time? Most of it, yeah. Why? Claire didn't answer right away. She was watching the soldiers start to gather on the parade ground, hundreds of them, forming up in neat rows. Young, fit, trained, but the heat didn't care about training. "We should set up closer to the formation," Claire said, "and make sure we've got more fluids on hand. If this drags past noon—" "It won't," Rivas said. "They're not stupid." Claire looked at him. Rivas met her eyes, then looked away. "Fine," he muttered. "I'll grab extra water." Emma shot Claire a grateful look. Claire didn't acknowledge it. She just went back to watching the formation. By 9:45, the parade ground was packed. 5,000 people, maybe more. Soldiers in dress uniforms standing in rows so straight they looked like they'd been drawn with a ruler. National Guard units, state officials, a delegation from the governor's office. Ironvale's top brass lined up on a raised platform under a canopy, metals gleaming in the sun. Claire stood with Team 3 near the south edge of the field, close enough to respond but far enough to stay out of the way. The heat was suffocating now. She could feel sweat gathering under her collar, rolling down her spine. Emma looked like she might throw up. "Breathe," Claire said softly. Emma nodded, gulping air. The ceremony began. Speeches. Long ones. A colonel whose voice boomed across the field, talking about service and sacrifice and the importance of joint operations. A state representative who clearly had no idea what she was talking about, but smiled a lot. The crowd stood at attention, unmoving. 15 minutes in, Claire saw the first signs. A soldier in the second row swaying slightly. Another one blinking too much, trying to stay focused. A third shifting weight from foot to foot, which you weren't supposed to do, but which meant his legs were starting to cramp. She glanced at Rivas. He wasn't watching. "Rivas." "What?" "Second row, fourth from the left. Watch him." Rivas squinted. "He's fine." Not for long. 30 seconds later, the soldier's knees buckled. He caught himself, locked his legs again, but his face had gone pale. Rivas swore under his breath and grabbed his kit. "Stay here," he told Emma. Claire was already moving. They reached the formation just as the soldier started to go down. Rivas caught him under one arm, Claire took the other, and they hauled him out of the line and into the shade. The soldier was mumbling, disoriented, his skin clammy and hot at the same time. "Heat exhaustion," Claire said. She pulled a water bottle from her belt, cracked it open, and held it to his lips. "Small sips. Don't chug." The soldier drank. Rivas checked his pulse. "He'll be fine," Rivas said. Just needs to cool down. Claire nodded, but she wasn't looking at the soldier anymore. She was looking back at the formation. 3 more were swaying now. This is going to get worse, she said. Rivas followed her gaze. His jaw tightened. Yeah. They went back to their post. Emma looked terrified. It's okay, Claire said. Just be ready. The speeches droned on. By 10:30, they'd pulled 4 more soldiers out of the formation. By 1100, it was 7. The heat was relentless, and the ceremony showed no signs of stopping. Claire moved through the crowd like a shadow, quick, efficient, invisible. She didn't wait for people to collapse. She spotted the signs early and got to them first. Rivas noticed. You're good at this, he said during a brief lull. Claire didn't answer. I mean it, Rivas said. You've done this before. A long time ago. Where? Claire handed him a water bottle. Doesn't matter. Rivas opened his mouth to press, then thought better of it. The ceremony finally ended at 11:45. The formation broke. People started moving toward the shade, peeling off jackets, gulping water. The crowd thinned. Claire stood near the edge of the field, watching the chaos settle, her hands still and her breathing even. That was when Major Garrett Lansing noticed her. Lansing was tall, mid-40s, with the kind of squared-off jaw and rigid posture that screamed career military. He'd been standing on the platform during the ceremony, and now he was making his way through the dispersing crowd, shaking hands, nodding at subordinates. His eyes swept the area and landed on Claire. He frowned. Then he started walking toward her. Claire saw him coming. She didn't move. Lansing stopped a few feet away, looking her up and down. His expression was somewhere between confusion and irritation. Who are you? He said. Nurse Whitmore, sir. Medical standby. You're not in uniform. Claire glanced down at her scrubs. I'm civilian medical staff, sir, reassigned from active duty. Lansing's frown deepened. Reassigned? Yes, sir. Why? Claire met his eyes. Medical separation. Lansing's lip curled, just slightly. Just enough. So you couldn't hack it. The words hung in the air. Somewhere behind them, someone laughed. A sharp, ugly sound. A few people nearby turned to look. Claire's expression didn't change. I did my job, sir, she said quietly. Clearly not well enough, Lansing said. He stepped closer, voice dropping just enough to feel personal. You know what I see? Someone who couldn't cut it. Someone who's taking up space, dead weight. Claire's hands stayed at her sides. Her breathing stayed even. Respectfully, sir. I don't care about respect, Lansing snapped. I care about standards, and you don't meet them. He turned away, dismissing her. Claire didn't move. Sir, she said. Lansing stopped, turned back. His eyes were cold now. What? Permission to retrieve my sealed personnel file. Lansing blinked. The irritation on his face flickered, replaced by something else. Confusion, then suspicion. What file? My service record, sir. It's classified. But if you'd like to review it before making further assessments, I can have it unsealed. Lansing stared at her. The crowd around them had gone quiet. People were watching now. You're bluffing, Lansing said. Claire tilted her head slightly. No, sir. Lansing's jaw tightened. He stepped forward, and before anyone could react, his hand came up fast and cracked across Claire's face. The slap echoed across the field. Claire's head turned with the blow. Blood appeared at the corner of her mouth. But she didn't step back, didn't raise her hands, didn't make a sound. She just looked at him. The silence was total. Lansing's hand was still raised, trembling slightly. His face had gone red. You don't talk to me like that, he said, voice shaking. You don't... Permission to retrieve my files, sir, Claire said again. Her voice was calm, steady, unshaken. Somewhere in the crowd, a young lieutenant went pale. He turned to the man beside him, whispering something urgent. The man's eyes went wide. Lansing's hand dropped. He looked around, suddenly aware of how many people were watching, how many phones were out. Get out of here, he said, voice low. Claire didn't move. I said get out. Claire nodded once. Then she turned and walked away, her steps measured and precise. Behind her, the whispers started. Claire didn't go far. She walked past the medical tent, past the parking lot, and into the administrative building at the east end of the base. The air conditioning hit her like a wall, cold and sharp. She moved through the hallways without hesitation, taking 2 flights of stairs up to the personnel records office. The clerk behind the desk looked up, startled. "Can I help you?" "I need to retrieve a sealed file," Claire said. "Authorization code Tango 79er Victor Black." The clerk blinked. I'll need to verify." "Do it." The clerk's hands moved quickly over the keyboard. A moment later, his face went pale. This requires command-level approval. Check the authorization again," Claire said quietly. The clerk did. His mouth opened, closed. He looked at Claire, then back at the screen. "I'll get the file," he said. 5 minutes later, Claire walked out with a sealed envelope in her hand. She went back to the parade ground. The crowd was still there, milling around, talking, drinking water. Lansing was near the platform, speaking with another officer. He looked up when Claire approached, and his expression darkened. "I told you to leave," he said. Claire held out the envelope. "My file, sir." Lansing snatched it from her hand. "This is ridiculous." He tore it open. The first page was a personnel summary. Standard information, name, rank, assignment history. The second page made him stop. The third page made his hands start shaking. By the fourth page, his face had gone completely white. Claire stood there, silent, as Lansing read. The crowd around them had gone quiet again. People were watching, waiting. Lansing looked up at her, and for the first time there was something other than arrogance in his eyes. Fear. "You—" His voice cracked. "You were—" "A combat medic, sir. Rapid response unit. Classified operations. I was deployed in 3 active conflict zones over 4 years. My last mission was an emergency extraction under enemy fire. I went back into the zone 6 times to pull wounded personnel out. The building collapsed on the 7th. Claire's voice was flat, clinical, like she was reading from a report. I lost 40% of my hearing, sustained spinal injuries, severe PTSD. I was medically separated and my file was sealed per operational security protocols." She paused. "You just struck a decorated combat veteran in front of 5,000 witnesses, sir." Lansing's hands were shaking so hard the papers rustled. He looked around, at the crowd, at the phones, at the officers who were now staring at him with expressions ranging from shock to disgust. "I didn't—" he started. "You did," Claire said. Her voice was still calm, still steady. "And now everyone knows." Somewhere in the crowd, a salute went up. Then another. Then a dozen more. Within seconds, half the formation was saluting, hands snapping up sharp and clean, eyes locked on Claire. Lansing looked like he might be sick. Claire didn't salute back. She just stood there, blood still on her lip, her gray eyes fixed on the man who'd tried to break her. "Permission to return to duty, sir," she said softly. Lansing opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Claire turned and walked away. Behind her, the salutes held. The administration building swallowed her whole. Claire pushed through the heavy glass doors and kept moving, her footsteps echoing down the empty corridor. The air conditioning was too cold now, raising goosebumps on her arms, but she didn't slow down. Behind her, she could still hear the murmur of the crowd, voices rising, overlapping, buzzing with shock and confusion, and something that sounded like vindication. She didn't look back. The hallway stretched ahead, fluorescent lights flickering in that half-broken way that made everything look washed out and surreal. Her reflection ghosted across the windows as she passed. Pale face, blood still dark at the corner of her mouth, eyes straight ahead. She looked like someone walking away from an explosion in a movie, except there was no dramatic music, no slow motion, no relief, just the sound of her own breathing. Claire turned left at the end of the hall and pushed into the women's restroom. The door swung shut behind her with a pneumatic hiss. She stood there for a moment, hands braced against the sink, staring at her own face in the mirror. The split in her lip was small but deep. Blood had dried in a thin line down to her chin. Her left cheek was already starting to bruise, a faint shadow spreading under the skin. She looked tired. She looked older than 34. She looked like someone who'd been hit before and knew exactly how much it would hurt later. Claire turned on the faucet and cupped cold water in her hands, rinsing her mouth, washing the blood away. The water ran pink, then clear. She dabbed at the cut with a paper towel, wincing slightly, then pressed it against her lip until the bleeding stopped. Her hands were steady. That was the thing people never understood. They expected shock, tears, rage, something visible, something they could point to and say, "See, she's human." But Claire had learned a long time ago that the body could do its job even when the mind was somewhere else entirely. Even when you were so tired you couldn't remember the last time you'd slept through the night. Even when the world had just split open in front of 5,000 people and you were standing in the center of it, holding everything together with spit and willpower. She dropped the paper towel in the trash and walked out. The hallway was still empty, but she could hear voices now, muffled, coming from somewhere deeper in the building. Raised voices, someone shouting. Claire didn't speed up, but she didn't slow down either. She just kept walking, one foot in front of the other, until she reached the stairwell and started climbing. By the time she got back to the ICU, it was past noon. Dolores was at the nurse's station, head down over a stack of charts, a pen clenched between her teeth. She looked up when Claire approached, and her eyes went wide. "Jesus Christ," Dolores said, pulling the pen out of her mouth. "What happened to your face?" "I'm fine." "You don't look fine. You look like someone clocked you." Claire didn't answer. She just signed back in on the shift log and reached for the first chart on the stack. Dolores stood up, blocking her path. "Whitmore, I'm serious. What happened out there?" "I got pulled into the ceremony. There was an incident. It's handled." "An incident?" Dolores' voice climbed an octave. "People are saying a major hit you in front of half the base." Claire met her eyes. "That's what happened." Dolores stared at her, mouth half open, like she was waiting for the punchline. When it didn't come, she sat down hard in her chair. "Are you filing a report?" "I don't need to." "The hell you don't. You can't just—" "It's already being handled," Claire said quietly. "Trust me." Dolores looked at her for a long moment, then shook her head. "You're the weirdest person I've ever met." "I know." "Go take a break. You look like you're about to fall over." Claire nodded, but she didn't move. She stood there with the chart in her hand, staring at the row of patient names, trying to remember what she was supposed to be doing. Her mind felt slow, like it was moving through water. Dolores' voice softened. "Seriously, go sit down, drink some water. I'll cover for you." This time, Claire listened. She walked to the break room, poured herself a cup of coffee that had been sitting on the burner too long, and sat down at the small table by the window. The view looked out over the west parking lot, rows of cars baking in the sun, heat shimmering off the asphalt. Beyond that, the parade ground. She could still see people milling around, though the crowd had thinned. Her phone buzzed. Claire pulled it out of her pocket and glanced at the screen. 3 missed calls, 7 texts, all from numbers she didn't recognize. She put the phone face down on the table and drank her coffee. It tasted like burnt rubber. Outside, an ambulance pulled up to the ER bay, lights flashing but no siren. Claire watched the paramedics jump out, pulling a gurney from the back. The patient was conscious, sitting up, holding a towel to their head. Probably a laceration, maybe a concussion. The kind of thing that looked worse than it was. Claire's lip throbbed. She pressed her tongue against the cut, testing it, feeling the sharp sting radiate up into her gums. Pain was useful. It kept you focused, reminded you that you were still here, still breathing, still capable of feeling something other than the dull gray weight that settled over everything when you stopped moving long enough to notice it. Her phone buzzed again. This time, she picked it up. The text was from a number she did recognize, Rivas, the PA, from the ceremony. "You okay?" Claire stared at the message for a moment, then typed back. "Fine." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "People are talking. Command's pissed. Lansing's getting ripped apart." Claire didn't respond. Another message came through. "You didn't tell me you were SF." Claire's jaw tightened. She typed quickly. "I wasn't SF. I was a medic." "Same difference." "No. It's not." The dots appeared again, then stopped. No reply. Claire set the phone down and closed her eyes. Her head was starting to ache, a low, steady throb that radiated from the base of her skull up into her temples. She needed to eat something. She needed to sleep. She needed to stop replaying the last 2 hours in her head like a loop of footage she couldn't turn off. She didn't do any of those things. Instead, she stood up, dumped the rest of her coffee in the sink, and went back to work. The rest of the shift blurred together. Patient assessments, medication rounds, A post-op check on a woman recovering from gallbladder surgery who kept insisting she was fine, even though her vitals said otherwise. Claire stayed late to help with the transfer, then later still to finish charting because the resident on call had the handwriting of a drunk toddler and nobody could read his notes. By the time she clocked out, it was past 1900. The parking lot was nearly empty. The sun had finally dropped below the horizon, leaving the sky streaked with orange and purple. Claire walked to her car, a beat-up Honda Civic with a dent in the passenger door and a check engine light that had been on for 6 months, and climbed in. She sat there for a moment, hands on the wheel, staring at nothing. Then she started the engine and drove home. Her apartment was on the north side of Ironvale, in a complex that had been built in the 70s and hadn't been updated since. Peeling paint, cracked sidewalks, a pool that was always closed for maintenance. Claire's unit was on the second floor, at the end of the building, overlooking a parking lot and a chain-link fence. She unlocked the door and stepped inside. The apartment was small, 1 bedroom, 1 bath, a kitchen that opened into a living room barely big enough for a couch, and a TV. The walls were beige. The carpet was beige. The furniture was secondhand and didn't match. Claire had lived here for 6 months, and it still didn't feel like home. She dropped her keys on the counter, kicked off her shoes, and went straight to the bathroom. She peeled off her scrubs, turned on the shower, and stood under the water until it ran cold. When she got out, she wrapped herself in a towel and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call. Unknown number. Claire almost didn't answer, but something made her thumb hover over the screen, and then she was pressing the green button and lifting the phone to her ear. Whitmore. There was a pause, then a man's voice, clipped and professional. This is Colonel Raymond Hale, base commander at Ironvale. Am I speaking with Claire Whitmore? Claire's spine straightened automatically. Yes, sir. I need you to come in tomorrow morning, 800, my office. Can I ask what this is regarding, sir? I think you know. Claire closed her eyes. Yes, sir. Good. Don't be late. The line went dead. Claire set the phone down and lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. The silence in the apartment was thick, oppressive. She could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the distant sound of a car door slamming. Somewhere above her, a neighbor's footsteps creaking across the floor. She didn't sleep. At 5:45 the next morning, Claire was back in her car, driving toward the base. The sky was still dark, the streets empty. She stopped at a gas station and bought a cup of coffee that tasted like dishwater, then sat in the parking lot and drank it anyway. Her phone buzzed. Another text. This one from Dolores. Heard you got called in. You in trouble? Claire typed back. Don't know yet. Let me know if you need anything. Claire stared at the message for a moment, then sent back a thumbs-up emoji and put the phone away. She arrived at the base at 0730. The guard at the gate waved her through without asking for ID. He knew her by now. She parked in the visitor's lot and walked to the command building, a squat concrete structure at the center of the base that looked like it had been designed to survive a nuclear blast. Inside, the air was cold and smelled like floor wax and old paper. A young corporal at the front desk directed her to the 3rd floor, and she took the stairs because the elevator was too slow and she needed to keep moving. Colonel Hale's office was at the end of the hall, behind a door with a brass nameplate and a window that looked out over the parade ground. Claire knocked twice. Come in. She pushed the door open. Hale was standing behind his desk, reading something on his computer screen. He was in his late 50s, with close-cropped gray hair and a face that looked like it had been carved out of granite. He didn't look up when Claire entered. Close the door, he said. Claire did. Hale finally looked at her, his eyes sharp and assessing. Sit. Claire sat. Hale leaned back in his chair, folding his arms across his chest. I've spent the last 18 hours dealing with the fallout from what happened yesterday. Do you have any idea how many calls I've fielded? From the governor's office, from the National Guard, from the goddamn press. Claire didn't respond. Hale's jaw tightened. Major Lansing is currently under investigation. He's been suspended pending a formal inquiry. His career is over. Do you understand that? Yes, sir. And you're okay with that? It wasn't a question, but Claire answered anyway. I didn't ask for any of this, sir. No, Hale said. You just stood there and let him bury himself. Claire met his eyes. I defended myself, sir. That's all. Hale stared at her for a long moment, then let out a slow breath. Your file is a mess, Whitmore. Half of it's redacted. The other half reads like a goddamn action movie. 4 years in rapid response, 3 deployments, classified operations I don't even have clearance to read about, and then you just disappear. Medical separation, no follow-up, no reassignment. You end up here working civilian rotations like you're nobody. I am nobody, sir. Bullshit! Hale's voice cut through the room like a blade. You saved 16 lives on your last mission. 16. You went back into a collapsing building under enemy fire 6 times. You pulled people out who would have died if you hadn't been there. And then the building came down on top of you and you still crawled out. Claire's hands tightened in her lap. I did my job. Your job was to get out. You stayed. People needed help. And you almost died. Claire didn't answer. Hale leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. You know what the problem is, Whitmore? You're too damn good at what you do. And you don't care if anyone knows it. That makes people uncomfortable. It makes them question themselves. And when people like Lansing feel threatened, they lash out. I didn't threaten him, sir. You didn't have to. You just existed. Hale shook his head. He saw a quiet nurse and assumed weakness. He had no idea who he was dealing with, and now he's paying for it. Claire looked down at her hands. What happens now? Hale sat back. That depends on you. Sir? You could walk away, go back to your civilian rotation, keep your head down, let this blow over, or... He paused. You could come back. Claire looked up sharply. Come back where? Active duty, not combat. Your medical profile won't clear you for that. But training, mentorship. We've got a new rapid response program starting next quarter. Young medics, fresh out of school, no field experience. They need someone who's been there. Someone who knows what it's like when everything goes to hell and you're the only thing standing between life and death. Claire's throat tightened. I can't. Why not? Because I'm not that person anymore. Hale's expression softened just slightly. You were that person yesterday. You saw those soldiers dropping and you didn't hesitate. You moved. You acted. You saved lives. That's different. How? Claire's voice came out quieter than she intended. Because nobody was shooting at me. The silence stretched between them, heavy and uncomfortable. Hale watched her carefully, his eyes searching her face. PTSD? He asked finally, among other things. You getting help for it? I was. For a while. And now? Claire didn't answer. Hale sighed. Look, I'm not going to force you, but I'm also not going to let you waste away in a civilian rotation when you're capable of so much more. Think about it. That's all I'm asking. Claire nodded slowly. Yes, sir. Good. Now get out of here. You've got a shift to get to. Claire stood, turned toward the door. Whitmore. She stopped, looked back. Hale's expression was unreadable. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. For what happened, for what you've been through, and for the fact that it took something like yesterday for anyone to notice. Claire's throat went tight. She nodded once, then left. The hallway outside was empty. Claire walked quickly, head down, hands shoved in her pockets. Her mind was racing, thoughts tumbling over each other too fast to catch. She didn't want to go back. She didn't want to teach young medics how to do the things she'd done, how to carry the weight she was still carrying. She didn't want to be responsible for anyone else. But she also couldn't shake Hale's words. You were that person yesterday. She pushed through the exit door and stepped out into the morning sun. The heat hit her immediately, thick and humid. She stood there for a moment, letting it sink into her skin, then started walking toward the parking lot. That was when she saw them. A group of soldiers standing near the flagpole, maybe a dozen of them, clustered together, talking in low voices. They looked young, too young, probably fresh out of basic. One of them noticed her and straightened, then another, then all of them. And then, one by one, they saluted. Claire froze. The salutes held, crisp, clean, respectful. None of them said a word. They just stood there, hands raised, eyes forward. Claire's chest tightened. She didn't know what to do. She wasn't in uniform. She wasn't on active duty. She wasn't supposed to return the salute. But her hand came up anyway, Sharp, automatic, muscle memory. She held it for 3 seconds, then dropped her arm and walked past them without looking back. Her hands were shaking. By the time she reached her car, her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might crack a rib. She fumbled with her keys, dropped them, picked them up, and finally got the door open. She climbed in, slammed the door, and gripped the steering wheel with both hands. Her breath came in short, shallow bursts. Her vision blurred at the edges. She could feel the panic rising, clawing its way up her throat, and she forced it down the way she'd been taught, counted backward from 10, focused on the feeling of the wheel under her palms, grounded herself in the present. You're not there. You're here. You're safe. It took 5 minutes before her breathing evened out. When it did, she started the engine and drove back to the hospital. The rest of the day passed in a haze. Claire moved through her shift on autopilot, checking vitals, updating charts, responding to calls. Nobody mentioned the ceremony. Nobody asked about her face. It was like the whole thing had happened in a different universe. Except it hadn't. At 1600, Dolores pulled her aside. "You've got a visitor," she said. Claire frowned. "Who?" "Didn't say. Just asked for you by name. He's waiting in the lobby." Claire's stomach tightened. She walked to the lobby, half expecting to see Lansing standing there with some kind of twisted apology or threat. But it wasn't Lansing. It was a man in his early 30s wearing fatigues and a patch she recognized immediately, 82nd Airborne. He had a buzzed head, a scar running through his left eyebrow, and eyes that looked older than the rest of him. He stood when he saw her. "Nurse Whitmore?" "That's me." The man hesitated, then held out his hand. "Sergeant Marcus Webb. I was in the formation yesterday." Claire shook his hand. "Okay. I just wanted to say..." He paused like he was trying to find the right words. "I wanted to say thank you for what you did. Not just yesterday, but before." Claire's brow furrowed. "Before?" Webb nodded. "Kandahar. 4 years ago. Emergency extraction. You pulled my unit out of a collapsed building." The floor seemed to tilt under Claire's feet. "I don't..." She stopped, shook her head. "I don't remember." "You wouldn't," Webb said. "It was chaos. We were pinned down, the building was coming apart, and you came back. Over and over. You didn't stop." His voice cracked slightly. "You saved my life, and I never got to thank you for it." Claire stared at him, her mind racing, trying to pull the memory out of the fog. There had been so many missions, so many faces, so much blood. "I'm glad you made it," she said finally. Webb's eyes were wet. "I wouldn't have, without you." He stepped back, saluted, sharp and clean, then turned and walked away. Claire stood there, frozen, watching him go. Her phone buzzed. She pulled it out, hand still shaking, and looked at the screen. It was a text from an unknown number. No words. Just a photo. Claire opened it. The image showed her standing in the middle of the parade ground yesterday, surrounded by saluting soldiers. The angle was from above, probably taken from one of the administrative building windows. The lighting was perfect. Golden afternoon sun, long shadows, the formation stretching out behind her like a sea of raised hands. She looked small in the center of it all, and completely alone. Another text came through. "This is everywhere. You're famous." Claire deleted the photo and put her phone away. She went back to work. That night, she drove home in silence. She didn't turn on the radio, didn't check her messages. Just drove, hands tight on the wheel, eyes on the road. When she got to her apartment, there was someone sitting on the stairs outside her door. Claire stopped. The figure stood up, stepped into the light. It was a woman, late 20s maybe, dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, civilian clothes. She had a camera bag slung over one shoulder and a press badge clipped to her belt. "Claire Whitmore?" the woman said. Claire's jaw tightened. "No comment." "I'm not looking for a comment. I'm looking for the truth." "Same thing." The woman stepped forward. "My name is Jenna Calloway. I'm a reporter with the Georgia Tribune. I've been following your story since yesterday." "It's not a story. It is now." Jenna's eyes were sharp, intelligent. A decorated combat medic gets assaulted by a senior officer in front of thousands of people, and nobody knew who she was until she made them look. That's a story. Claire shook her head and moved toward her door. I'm not interested. What if I told you Lansing isn't the only one? Claire stopped. Jenna took another step closer. I've been digging. Lansing has a history. Complaints. Reprimands. All of them buried. All of them swept under the rug because he had the right connections. You're not the first person he's gone after. You're just the first one who fought back. Claire turned slowly. What do you want? I want to tell the whole story, Jenna said. Not just what happened yesterday, but everything that led up to it. The people he hurt, the system that protected him, and the woman who finally made him answer for it. I didn't do anything. You did more than anyone else has in 10 years. Claire stared at her, trying to decide if this was a trap or an opportunity, or both. I need time to think, Claire said finally. Jenna nodded to, okay, but think fast, because the news cycle moves quick, and if you don't control the narrative, someone else will. She handed Claire a business card, then turned and walked down the stairs. Claire stood there, holding the card, watching her go. Then she went inside, locked the door, and sat down on the couch in the dark. Her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Another text. They're going to destroy you for this. Claire stared at the message, her heart pounding. Then another text came through from the same number. Unless you destroy them first. Claire deleted the message without responding. She sat in the dark for another 20 minutes, phone face down on the coffee table, listening to the silence of her apartment settle around her like a weight. The air conditioner kicked on with a rattle, then hummed steadily. Outside, someone's car alarm went off, bleated for 30 seconds, then stopped. She picked up the business card Jenna had given her, turned it over in her fingers. The edges were sharp, freshly printed. Professional. Claire set it down and went to bed. She didn't sleep. At 4:30, she gave up trying. She got up, made coffee, and sat at her small kitchen table watching the sky lighten through the window. By 5:45, she was dressed and out the door. The hospital was quiet when she arrived. Night shift was wrapping up. Day shift hadn't fully kicked in yet. Claire clocked in, grabbed her assignment sheet, and started her rounds. ICU first. 3 patients, 1 post-surgical, stable, 1 elderly man with pneumonia, improving, 1 motorcycle accident victim, critical but holding. She checked vitals, adjusted medication drips, made notes. The work was mechanical, familiar. It required just enough focus to keep her mind from wandering. Dolores showed up at 06:30, looking more tired than usual. You see the news? She asked, dropping her bag behind the desk. Claire didn't look up from her chart. No. You're on it. I figured. Front page of the Tribune, decorated veteran assaulted by superior officer. They've got photos, interviews, the whole thing. Dolores paused. They're calling you a hero. Claire's pen stopped moving. I'm not. That's not what the article says. I don't care what the article says. Dolores leaned against the desk, arms crossed. You know people are going to want to talk to you, right? Press, lawyers, probably the base commander again. You can't just ignore this. Watch me. Whitmore? I have patience, Claire said, closing the chart. That's what I'm here for. She walked away before Dolores could respond. The morning passed in a blur of activity. A new admission came in, stroke victim, left side paralysis, family in hysterics. Claire helped stabilize him, coordinated with the neurologist, talked the daughter down from a panic attack. Then a code blue in the ER, cardiac arrest. 32-year-old male, no prior history. They got him back after 4 minutes of compressions and 2 shocks. Claire's hands were steady the whole time. By noon, she was running on fumes and caffeine. She ducked into the break room, poured another cup of coffee, and sat down. Her phone buzzed. She ignored it. Buzzed again. She pulled it out, ready to turn it off completely. It was a call from Colonel Hale. Claire stared at the screen for 3 rings, then answered. Whitmore. I need you back in my office. Now. Sir, I'm on shift. I don't care. Get someone to cover for you. This can't wait. The line went dead. Claire sat there for a moment, phone still pressed to her ear, then stood and walked back to the nurse's station. I need to go, she told Dolores. Dolores looked up, startled. What? We're slammed. I know. I'm sorry. It's base command. I don't have a choice. Dolores's expression shifted from irritation to concern. You in trouble? I don't know yet. Want me to come with you? Claire shook her head. I'll be fine. She clocked out, grabbed her keys, and drove to the base. This time, the guard at the gate made her show ID. He scanned it twice, checked something on his computer, then waved her through without a word. Claire parked in the same spot as yesterday and walked to the command building. The young corporal at the front desk looked nervous when he saw her. Colonel Hale's expecting you, he said quickly. 3rd floor, same as before. Claire took the stairs. When she reached Hale's office, the door was already open. Hale was inside, but he wasn't alone. 2 other people sat in chairs facing his desk. A man in a suit and a woman in a Navy uniform with commander's bars on her shoulders. Hale looked up when Claire appeared in the doorway. Close the door, he said. Claire stepped inside and shut it behind her. Sit, Hale said, gesturing to an empty chair. Claire sat. Hale folded his hands on his desk. This is Agent Richard Kowalski from the Inspector General's office and Commander Lisa Garrett from JAG. They have some questions for you. Claire's stomach tightened, but her face stayed neutral. About what, sir? Kowalski leaned forward. He was in his 40s, with thinning hair and sharp eyes. About Major Lansing, and about a pattern of misconduct that's been going on at this base for the last 8 years. Claire blinked. I don't understand. Yesterday's incident wasn't isolated, Garrett said. Her voice was clipped, professional. We've identified at least 12 other cases where Lansing used his position to intimidate, harass, or physically assault subordinates. None of them were reported. Most of the victims were reassigned or discharged before they could file complaints. Claire's pulse quickened. How do you know this? Because someone came forward, Kowalski said. After your story hit the news, 3 former personnel contacted our office. Within 6 hours, we had enough to open a formal investigation. Garrett pulled a folder from her briefcase and set it on the desk. We need your statement, everything you remember, everything he said, everything he did, and everything that happened afterward. Claire looked at the folder, then at Hale. Sir, I already gave my account. This is different, Hale said. This is a federal investigation. If Lansing goes down, he's not going down alone. We're looking at his chain of command, his enablers, everyone who turned a blind eye. Claire's hands clenched in her lap. I don't want to be the face of this. You already are, Kowalski said bluntly. The second you handed him that file, you became the catalyst. Now you can either help us finish what you started, or you can walk away and let him bury everyone else the way he tried to bury you. The room went silent. Claire stared at the folder. Her mind was racing, pulling up memories she'd worked hard to bury. Faces, voices, the weight of decisions that shouldn't have been hers to make. I need time, she said finally. You have 24 hours, Garrett said. After that, we move forward with or without you. Claire nodded slowly, then stood. Can I go? Hale gestured toward the door. You're dismissed. Claire left without another word. She made it halfway down the hall before her legs started shaking. She ducked into a bathroom, locked herself in a stall, and sat down on the closed toilet lid. Her breath came in short, shallow bursts. Her vision tunneled. She pressed her palms against her thighs and counted backward from 10. You're not there. You're here. You're safe. It took longer this time. Almost 10 minutes before the panic receded enough for her to stand up. When she came out, she splashed cold water on her face and stared at herself in the mirror. Her reflection looked pale, hollow-eyed, like someone who hadn't slept in days. Because she hadn't. Claire dried her hands and walked out. Her phone buzzed as she reached her car. Another text from the unknown number. You think they'll protect you? They'll use you and throw you away. Claire stared at it, jaw tight, then typed back. Who is this? No response. She got in her car and drove. Not back to the hospital, not back to her apartment. Just drove, windows down, letting the wind whip through the interior. She ended up on the outskirts of Ironvale, near a state park she'd driven past 100 times but never visited. She pulled into the lot, parked, and got out. The park was empty. A winding trail disappeared into the trees marked by a faded wooden sign. Claire followed it, hands in her pockets, eyes on the ground. The air smelled like pine and dirt. Birds called from somewhere overhead. She walked for 20 minutes before she stopped. There was a bench at the edge of a small clearing, overlooking a creek. Claire sat down and stared at the water. It moved slowly, dark and quiet, reflecting the trees above. She thought about Kandahar, about the building that had come down, about the faces of the people she'd pulled out. Some of them screaming, some of them silent, all of them covered in dust and blood. She thought about the ones she hadn't reached in time. She thought about Marcus Webb, standing in the hospital lobby with tears in his eyes. "You saved my life." Claire closed her eyes. Her phone rang. She looked at the screen. Jenna Calloway. Claire hesitated, then answered. "What do you want?" "I want to help," Jenna said, "but I need you to talk to me." "I can't." "You mean you won't?" "Same thing." Jenna's voice softened. "Look, I get it. You didn't ask for this. You just wanted to do your job and be left alone, but that's not an option anymore. People are watching. They're waiting to see what you do next." "I don't owe them anything." "No, you don't, but you owe it to yourself." Jenna paused. "I talked to one of Lansing's other victims today, a corporal named Daniels. He was discharged 3 years ago after Lansing accused him of insubordination. Daniels says it was retaliation for reporting safety violations. He tried to fight it, but nobody listened. Now he's working at a gas station in Alabama trying to support 2 kids on minimum wage." Claire's throat tightened. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because he wants to come forward. But he's scared. He thinks nobody will believe him. Unless—" Jenna stopped. "Unless someone like you stands with him." Claire didn't respond. "Just think about it," Jenna said. "That's all I'm asking." The line went dead. Claire sat there for another hour watching the creek before she finally stood up and walked back to her car. She drove to the hospital. Dolores was still at the nurse's station when Claire walked in. She looked up, surprised. "You're back?" "I need to finish my shift," Claire said. Dolores studied her face, then nodded. "Okay. You're on post-op recovery, Bay 3. Claire grabbed the chart and went to work. The rest of the day passed without incident. She helped a patient walk for the first time after hip surgery, changed dressings, updated charts, stayed late to help with a transfer. By the time she clocked out, it was past 2,000. Her phone had 17 missed calls. Claire ignored all of them. She drove home, parked, and climbed the stairs to her apartment. There was no one waiting this time. She unlocked the door, stepped inside, and froze. Someone had been here. Nothing was broken. Nothing was taken. But things were wrong. The couch cushions were slightly askew. Her mail on the counter was stacked differently than she'd left it. The closet door was open a crack. Claire's heart started pounding. She backed toward the door, hand reaching for her phone. Then she saw the envelope on the kitchen table. It was thick, manila, unsealed. Claire approached it slowly, every nerve on edge. She picked it up and looked inside. Documents, photos, personnel files. She pulled them out and spread them across the table. The first photo showed Lansing with another officer, someone Claire didn't recognize. They were at a bar, drinks in hand, laughing. The timestamp said 3 years ago. The second photo showed the same officer with a young private. The private looked uncomfortable, leaning away. The officer's hand was on his shoulder. The third photo was a hospital report. The private's name was redacted, but the injuries weren't. Fractured ribs, concussion. Accidental fall, listed as the cause. Claire's stomach turned. She flipped through the rest of the documents. Complaint forms that had been filed and ignored, transfer requests that had been denied, medical records showing a pattern of injuries that didn't match the official explanations. At the bottom of the stack was a handwritten note. "They've been covering for each other for years. You're not the first, but you can be the last." No signature. Claire stared at the note, her hands shaking. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Again. This time she answered, "Who is this?" A woman's voice, quiet, careful. "Someone who wants the same thing you do." "And what's that?" "Justice." Claire's jaw tightened. "You broke into my apartment. I needed you to see the truth. They won't give it to you. They'll bury it, the same way they've buried everything else." "Why me?" "Because you're the only one who's been brave enough to fight back." The woman paused. "My name is Lieutenant Amy Reeves. I served under Lansing 4 years ago. He made my life hell for 8 months, then had me transferred when I tried to report him. I've been collecting evidence ever since." Claire sat down hard in a chair. "Why didn't you come forward?" "I tried. Nobody listened. But now," Reeves's voice cracked, "now people are listening because of you." "I didn't do anything. You stood up. That's everything." Claire closed her eyes. What do you want from me? I want you to give that evidence to the IG. I want you to testify. I want you to make sure he doesn't get away with it. And if I say no? Reeves was quiet for a long moment. Then he wins. And everyone he hurt, everyone he's going to hurt, they all lose. The line went dead. Claire sat there, staring at the document spread across her table. She didn't sleep that night either. At 600, she was back at the base. She walked into Colonel Hale's office without knocking. Hale looked up, startled. Kowalski and Garrett were there too. I'll testify, Claire said. Hale leaned back in his chair. You're sure? Claire set the envelope on his desk. I'm sure. Kowalski opened it, scanned the contents, and his eyes went wide. Where did you get this? Does it matter? It does if we want to use it in court. Then find a way, Claire said, because that's all you're getting from me. Garrett flipped through the photos, her expression darkening. This is... Jesus, how many people knew about this? Enough, Claire said, and none of them did anything. Hale stood up. We'll need your full statement, everything, starting from the day you arrived at Ironvale. Claire nodded. When? Now. They spent the next 6 hours going through every detail. Claire described the ceremony, the confrontation, the slap. She described the way people had looked at her before they knew and after. She described the pattern she'd seen, the way Lansing had targeted her the same way he'd targeted others. By the time they finished, it was past noon. Kowalski closed his notebook. This is good. This is really good. We can move forward. How long? Claire asked. For what? For it to be over. Kowalski and Garrett exchanged a look. Could be weeks, Garrett said. Could be months. Depends on how hard his lawyers fight. Claire's shoulders sagged. Hale walked her to the door. You did the right thing. Doesn't feel like it. It never does. He paused. For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. Claire looked at him, surprised. I mean it, Hale said. What you're doing, it takes guts. More than most people have. Claire didn't know what to say. She just nodded and left. She drove back to the hospital in a daze. Her shift started in an hour, but she couldn't bring herself to go inside yet. She sat in the parking lot, engine off, staring at nothing. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jenna. Hearing reports of a major investigation at Ironvale. Multiple officers under review. Any comment? Claire typed back. No. Another buzz. This time from Marcus Webb. Just heard the news, thank you, for everything. Claire stared at the message, her throat tight. Another buzz. Dolores. You okay? Claire didn't respond to any of them. She just put the phone away and got out of the car. The hospital felt different when she walked in. People were staring, whispering. A resident she'd worked with last week stopped her in the hallway. Is it true? He asked. About Lansing? Claire kept walking. She clocked in, grabbed her assignment, and buried herself in work. Patient assessments, medication rounds, a post-op complication that required 2 hours of coordinated care. She moved through it all like a machine, focused and efficient. By 1800, she was exhausted. She clocked out and headed for the exit. That was when she saw him. Major Garrett Lansing. He was standing in the lobby, out of uniform, wearing jeans and a wrinkled shirt. His face was unshaven, his eyes were bloodshot. He saw her at the same moment she saw him. They both stopped. The lobby went quiet. People were watching. Lansing took a step forward. Claire's hand moved instinctively to the panic button on her belt, a small device all hospital staff carried for emergencies. I just want to talk, Lansing said. His voice was hoarse. We have nothing to talk about. Please. His eyes were desperate. Just 5 minutes. Security was already moving toward them. Claire held up a hand, stopping them. You've got 2, she said. Lansing swallowed hard. I know what I did. I know I can't take it back, but I need you to understand. Understand what? That you're a bully who got caught? I was under pressure. The job, the expectations, I snapped. You've been snapping for 8 years, Claire said, her voice cold. I'm not the first. I'm just the first one who didn't disappear. Lansing's face crumpled. I'm sorry. No, you're not. You're sorry you got caught. That's not... Your 2 minutes are up. Claire turned and walked away. Behind her, Lansing started shouting. You think you're better than me? You think you're some kind of hero? You're nothing. You're just a washed-up medic who couldn't handle the real world. Security grabbed him. He fought back, still yelling, his voice echoing through the lobby. You ruined my life. You ruined everything. They dragged him toward the exit. Claire didn't look back. She pushed through the doors and stepped out into the parking lot. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was pounding. She made it to her car, got inside, and locked the doors. Then she started crying. She didn't know why. Maybe it was relief. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was everything she'd been holding back for the last 72 hours finally breaking through. She cried until her chest ached and her eyes burned. When she finally stopped, she wiped her face, started the engine, and drove home. Her apartment was still a mess from the break-in. Claire didn't care. She just collapsed on the couch and stared at the ceiling. Her phone buzzed. Another unknown number, another text. You should have kept your mouth shut. Then another. People like you don't win. Then another. Watch your back. Claire stared at the messages, her blood running cold. Someone knocked on her door. Claire stood up slowly, heart pounding. She moved to the window and looked out. A man stood on her doorstep. Military haircut, civilian clothes. He wasn't facing the door. He was looking at his phone. Claire backed away from the window. Another knock. Harder this time. Claire Whitmore? The man called. I need to talk to you. Claire grabbed her phone and dialed 911. The dispatcher answered. 911, what's your emergency? There's someone outside my apartment. I don't know who he is. I think he's... The knocking stopped. Claire moved back to the window. The man was gone. Ma'am? The dispatcher said. Are you still there? Claire scanned the parking lot. No sign of him. I think he left. Do you want us to send an officer? Claire hesitated. No, I'm okay. She hung up. But she wasn't okay. She grabbed her keys, her wallet, and a change of clothes, stuffed them in a bag, and left the apartment. She drove to a motel on the other side of town, paid cash for a room, and locked herself inside. She didn't turn on the lights, just sat on the bed in the dark, staring at the door. Her phone buzzed. A call this time. From Colonel Hale. Claire answered. Whitmore, where are you? Why? Because Lansing just filed a restraining order against you. Says you've been harassing him, threatening him. It's bullshit, but his lawyer's pushing hard. Claire's stomach dropped. What? They're trying to flip the script, make you the aggressor. We're fighting it, but someone was at my apartment, Claire said. Just now, I don't know who. They left when I called the police. Hale swore. Where are you now? Motel, east side. Stay there. I'm sending someone to watch your door. I don't need... It's not a request, Hale said. This thing is escalating faster than we expected. Lansing's got people protecting him. Powerful people. They're not going to let him go down without a fight. The line went dead. Claire sat there, phone in hand, staring at the wall. 30 minutes later, there was a knock on the motel room door. Claire froze. Nurse Whitmore? A woman's voice called. My name is Captain Sarah Lynn. Colonel Hale sent me. Claire moved to the door, looked through the peephole. A woman in fatigue stood outside, hands visible, no weapon drawn. Claire opened the door a crack. Lynn held up her military ID. I'm here to make sure you're safe. Claire let her in. Lynn did a sweep of the room, checked the windows, then positioned herself near the door. I'll be here all night. Try to get some sleep. Claire nodded, but she didn't sleep. She sat on the bed, back against the wall, watching the door. At 300, her phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. You can't hide forever. Then a photo loaded. Claire's heart stopped. It was a picture of the motel, taken from the parking lot, time-stamped 3 minutes ago. Someone was outside. Right now. Claire showed the photo to Captain Lynn without saying a word. Lynn's expression changed instantly. She pulled her sidearm, moved to the window, and peered through a crack in the curtain. The parking lot was visible below, a dozen cars scattered across the asphalt, streetlights casting long shadows. Nothing moved. Stay back from the door, Lynn said quietly. She pulled out her radio. This is Lynn. I need eyes on the Sunrise Motel, East parking lot. Possible hostile surveilling my location. Static crackled. Then a male voice. Copy that. 2 minutes out. Lynn kept her position at the window, weapon low but ready. Claire sat on the edge of the bed, phone clutched in her hand, every muscle tight. The seconds dragged. The air felt thick, oppressive. A car pulled into the lot. Unmarked sedan, headlights off. 2 figures got out, moving quickly but carefully. Military bearing. They split up, one circling left, one right. Lynn's radio crackled again. Lots clear. No visual on anyone matching surveillance profile. Lynn didn't lower her weapon. Check the perimeter, rooftops, adjacent buildings. Copy. Claire's phone buzzed again. Another message. Same number. Smart, but not smart enough. Then the screen went black. Claire tried to turn it back on. Nothing. The battery had been at 60% 2 minutes ago. They killed my phone, she said. Lynn glanced back. What? Remote wipe or something. It just died. Lynn swore under her breath and keyed her radio again. I need a tech unit at my location. Now. Negative. All units deployed to base. Situation developing. Lynn's jaw tightened. What situation? Unknown individual attempted to breach command building 20 minutes ago. Armed, detained but not talking. Claire's stomach dropped. Lansing? Lynn shook her head. Lansing's under house arrest. This is someone else. The pieces were falling into place too fast, too messy. Whoever was behind this wasn't just protecting Lansing. They were escalating. Lynn moved away from the window. We're leaving. Grab your bag. Where are we going? Base. Lockdown protocol. You're safer there than anywhere else. Claire grabbed her bag and followed Lynn out the door. The 2 soldiers from the sedan flanked them as they moved to the vehicle. One opened the rear door. Claire climbed in. Lynn slid in beside her. The driver pulled out fast, no lights, taking back streets away from the motel. Claire watched the buildings blur past. Who's doing this? We don't know yet, Lynn said, but someone with resources and motivation. Lansing doesn't have that kind of pull. No, but his friends might. The word hung in the air. Friends? Plural. The documents Amy Reeves had left in Claire's apartment hadn't just implicated Lansing. They'd shown a network, officers protecting officers, a system built on silence. The car took a hard turn onto the highway. The base was 15 minutes away. Claire's hands wouldn't stop shaking. When they arrived, the gates were locked down, armed guards, barricades, floodlights illuminating every inch of the perimeter. The sedan was waved through after a radio check. They drove straight to the command building and pulled into an underground garage Claire didn't even know existed. Lynn led her through a series of secure corridors, past checkpoints manned by stone-faced MPs, until they reached a conference room deep in the building's core. No windows. Reinforced door. Colonel Hale was inside, along with Kowalski, Garrett, and 3 other officers Claire didn't recognize. Hale looked up when they entered. Sit. Claire sat. Hale gestured to one of the officers, a lieutenant colonel with graying hair and sharp eyes. This is Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Venn, head of base security. He's going to walk you through what we know. Venn opened a laptop and turned it toward Claire. The screen showed security footage from the command building, timestamp 0237. A figure in dark clothing approached the rear entrance, moved quickly, tried to force the lock. Alarms triggered. Guards responded. The figure ran but didn't make it far. Tackled. Restrained. The next clip showed the interrogation room. The figure sat cuffed to a chair, hood removed. Claire's breath caught. It was a woman, mid-30s, military haircut. No insignia, but her posture screamed soldier. Staff Sergeant Nicole Brennan, Venn said, formerly assigned to Lansing's unit. Discharged 2 years ago under questionable circumstances. She won't talk, but we pulled her phone. Found encrypted communication with at least 4 other individuals, all former personnel with ties to Lansing. Kowalski leaned forward. They're coordinating. This isn't random harassment. It's organized retaliation. Claire's voice came out quiet. Against me? Against the investigation, Garrett said. You're the visible target, but they're trying to shut down the whole thing. Intimidate witnesses, destroy evidence, create enough chaos that we can't proceed. Will it work? Not if we move fast, Hale said. We've already started bringing people in. 3 more arrests within the hour. But we need you to stay here under protection until this is contained. Claire shook her head. I have patience. I have a job. Your job can wait, Hale said firmly. Your life can't. Claire wanted to argue, but the exhaustion was too heavy. She just nodded. Lynn escorted her to a small room 2 floors down. Bare walls, single bed, locked door. Military housing, temporary quarters. Safe. "Try to get some rest," Lynn said. "I can't." "Try anyway." Lynn left. The lock clicked. Claire sat on the bed and stared at the wall. Her mind was spinning, replaying everything. The slap, the file, the salutes, the break-in, the photo. Brennan's face in the interrogation footage. She lay back, closed her eyes, and waited for sleep that wouldn't come. At 600, someone knocked. Claire sat up, disoriented. The knock came again. "It's Hale." She opened the door. Hale stood there holding a tray with coffee and a bagel. "Eat," he said, handing it to her. "I'm not hungry." "Eat anyway." Claire took the tray and sat back down. Hale stepped inside, leaving the door open. "We cracked Brennan's phone," he said. "Found the others. All former personnel who were either discharged or reassigned after crossing Lansing. They've been planning this for weeks, waiting for the right moment. And I gave it to them." "No. Lansing gave it to them when he hit you. You just exposed what was already there." Hale paused. "We're holding a press conference at 1000. Inspector General's office is going public with the investigation. Full transparency. Names, dates, charges." Claire set the coffee down. "That's going to be a bloodbath." "It already is, but it's the only way to stop them from controlling the narrative." "What do you need from me?" "Nothing," Hale said. "You've done enough. Just stay here until it's over." Claire met his eyes. "And when is it over?" Hale didn't answer. He just left. The press conference started at 1000. Claire watched it on a TV in the corner of the room, live feed from the base's main briefing hall. Kowalski stood at a podium, flanked by Garrett and 2 officials from the IG's office. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions. Kowalski raised a hand for silence. At 9 a.m. this morning, the Inspector General's office formally charged Major Garrett Lansing with multiple counts of assault, harassment, and conduct unbecoming an officer. Additionally, 4 other individuals, all with prior ties to Lansing, have been charged with conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and attempted intimidation of federal witnesses. The room erupted. Kowalski kept talking, voice steady, laying out the timeline, the pattern of abuse, the cover-ups, the network of enablers. Claire watched, numb. Then Kowalski said something that made her sit up. This investigation was initiated after a decorated combat medic, unjustly overlooked and dismissed for years, had the courage to stand her ground and demand accountability. Her actions have exposed a systemic failure that endangered countless service members. Today, we honor that courage by ensuring those responsible face the full consequences of their actions. The camera cut to the reporters. Someone shouted a question. "Can you confirm the medic's identity?" Kowalski shook his head. "For her safety, we will not be releasing her name at this time." But it didn't matter. Claire's face had already been plastered across every news outlet in the state. People knew. The conference ended at 10:45. Claire turned off the TV and sat in silence. Her door opened. Lynn stepped in. "You've got a visitor," Lynn said. "Who?" "Amy Reeves." Claire blinked. "Let her in." A moment later, Reeves walked through the door. She was younger than Claire had imagined, late 20s, with short blonde hair and nervous eyes. She stood just inside the doorway, hands clasped in front of her. "I'm sorry," Reeves said, "for breaking into your place, for putting you in danger. I didn't know what else to do." Claire gestured to the chair. "Sit." Reeves sat. "Why didn't you come forward sooner?" Claire asked. "I tried. 3 years ago, right after I was transferred. I filed a formal complaint with the IG. It went nowhere. They said there wasn't enough evidence, said it was my word against his." Reeves's voice cracked. "So I started collecting proof. Photos, emails, testimonies from others. I thought if I had enough, someone would listen. And then I handed him that file. And then everything changed," Reeves said. "People started talking, coming forward. The things I'd been screaming about for years, suddenly they mattered." Claire leaned back. "How many others are there?" "At least 20, maybe more. Some are still active duty. Some got out. A few won't talk because they're too scared." Reeves looked at her hands. "But they're watching, waiting to see if this is real." It's real, Claire said quietly. Reeves met her eyes. I know, because of you. Claire didn't know what to say to that. Reeves stood. I just wanted to say thank you. And I'm sorry for everything. She left before Claire could respond. The rest of the day passed in a strange, detached haze. Claire stayed in the room, pacing, thinking, trying to make sense of everything. Lynn brought her lunch, then dinner. Neither tasted like anything. At 1900, Hale came back. We've got something, he said. One of Brennan's co-conspirators flipped, gave us names. Turns out this goes higher than Lansing. Claire's stomach tightened. How high? Brigadier General Ethan Cross, retired. He was Lansing's mentor 20 years ago, helped him climb the ranks, protected him when complaints came in. Why would he risk that? Because Lansing knows things, about Cross, about others. If Lansing goes down, he takes a lot of people with him. Hale paused. Cross has been funding Brennan and the others, paying them to intimidate witnesses, destroy evidence, anything to keep this from reaching him. Claire sat down slowly. So this isn't just about Lansing. No, it's about an entire generation of officers who built their careers on silence. And you just turned the lights on. What happens now? Cross is being brought in for questioning. If he lawyers up, this could drag out for months. But if we can flip him the way we flipped Brennan's guy... Hale shrugged. It's over. And if he doesn't flip, then we fight. Hale left. Claire lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to process it all. At 21:30, the alarms went off. Loud, blaring, red lights flashing in the hallway. Claire jumped up. Lynn burst through the door, weapon drawn. We're moving. Now! What's happening? Breach. South perimeter. Armed individuals, unknown number. They ran. Down the hallway, through a stairwell, into the underground garage. 2 other soldiers joined them, forming a protective box around Claire. They moved fast, boots echoing on concrete. Gunfire erupted somewhere above them, muffled but unmistakable. Lynn keyed her radio. Shots fired. Level 3, requesting backup. Backup en route. Evacuate the package. They reached the garage. An armored vehicle waited, engine running. Lynn shoved Claire inside. The door slammed. The vehicle lurched forward. Claire pressed her face to the small window. The base was chaos, soldiers running, lights flashing, sirens wailing. They passed the command building just as a secondary explosion ripped through the east wing. Glass shattered. Smoke billowed. Jesus Christ, one of the soldiers muttered. The vehicle punched through the north gate and onto the open road. No pursuit. Just darkness. They drove for 20 minutes before pulling into an unmarked facility. Low building, razor wire, no signage. A black site. Claire was escorted inside through multiple checkpoints into a secure holding room. Hale was already there. What the hell was that? Claire demanded. Cross's people, Hale said, his face grim. They knew we were closing in, decided to send a message. They attacked a military base. They attacked the command building, targeted the evidence room, burned half of it before we could stop them. Claire's blood went cold. The files, some survived, but a lot didn't. Hale's jaw tightened. They're trying to erase the trail. Did they get Cross? He's in the wind. We had a team en route to his house when the attack started. By the time they got there, he was gone. Claire sank into a chair. So it was all for nothing. No. Hale pulled out a tablet and set it on the table. Brennan's contact gave us something before the attack. Video files, recorded conversations between Cross and Lansing. Dates back 5 years. Cross knew everything, every complaint, every victim, and he buried it all. He pressed play. The video showed Lansing and Cross in a private office. Lansing looked younger, less worn. I'm telling you, she won't let it go, Lansing said. She's filed 3 complaints already. Cross leaned back in his chair. Then we reassign her, somewhere she can't cause trouble. What if she keeps pushing? Then we make it clear she's the problem, not you. Question her competence, her stability. Make it about her, not what you did. Lansing nodded. And if that doesn't work? Cross smiled. Then we find another way. We always do. The video ended. Claire felt sick. Hale shut off the tablet. This is enough to bury both of them, but we need to find Cross first. How? That's the question. Claire stared at the blank screen. Lansing knows where he is. Hale looked up. What? Lansing's scared. He's under house arrest, his career's over, his whole life is falling apart. Cross is his only lifeline. If Cross goes down, Lansing has no one left to protect him. You think he'd give him up? I think he'll do whatever it takes to save himself, Claire said. He already has. Hale was quiet for a moment, then he stood. I'll talk to the prosecutor, see if we can offer him a deal. What kind of deal? Reduce charges in exchange for Cross's location. Hale paused. It won't be easy. Lansing's lawyers will fight it. Then make it worth his while, Claire said. Tell him if he cooperates, he might see the outside of a cell before he's 70. If he doesn't, he dies in prison. Hale studied her face. You really want him to walk away from this? I want Cross, Claire said. Lansing's a bully. Cross is the system, and the system is what needs to burn. Hale nodded slowly. I'll make the call. He left. Claire sat alone in the holding room, listening to the hum of the ventilation system. Her whole body ached. Her mind felt like it was running on fumes. 2 hours later, Hale came back. Lansing's talking, he said. Cross is at a private estate in North Carolina. Remote. Heavily secured. We've got a tactical team mobilizing now. When do they move? 400, 3 hours. Claire stood. I want to be there when they bring him in. Hale shook his head. No way. Too dangerous. I don't care. Claire, I need to see his face, she said, voice hard. I need to see him realize it's over. Hale stared at her, then sighed. You stay in the vehicle. You don't get out. You don't interfere. Fine. They left at 0330. Claire rode in an unmarked SUV with Hale and 2 federal agents. The tactical team was already en route, traveling separately. The drive took 4 hours, winding through dark back roads into the mountains. The estate appeared just after dawn, massive, isolated, surrounded by woods. High walls, cameras, guards visible at the gate. The SUV pulled off the road a quarter-mile out. They waited. At 800, the tactical team moved in. Claire watched through binoculars as armored vehicles blocked the gate. Soldiers poured out, weapons raised. The guards at the gate surrendered immediately. No shots fired. The front door of the estate burst open. More soldiers flooded inside. 15 minutes later, they emerged. General Ethan Cross walked between 2 soldiers, hands cuffed behind his back. He was in his 60s, silver hair, expensive suit. He looked calm, almost bored, until he saw the cameras. A news crew had somehow gotten wind of the raid, probably tipped off by the prosecutor's office. They were set up at the edge of the property, filming everything. Cross's expression changed. The calm cracked. He tried to pull away from the soldiers, but they held him firm. This is a mistake, Cross shouted. You have no idea what you're doing. The soldiers ignored him. They loaded him into an armored transport. The door slammed shut. Hale lowered his binoculars. It's done. Claire didn't respond. She just watched the transport pull away, carrying Cross toward whatever justice looked like. Back at the black site, they held Cross in a separate wing. Claire wasn't allowed near him, but she heard the updates. He'd lawyered up immediately, refused to talk. The prosecutors were building their case, but it would take time. At 1600, Kowalski found Claire in the break room. We've got him on obstruction, conspiracy, and about 15 other charges, Kowalski said. Between the video evidence, Lansing's testimony, and the financial records we pulled from his estate, he's not walking away from this. What about the others? Claire asked. Still rounding them up, but the network's collapsing. People are flipping left and right, trying to cut deals before it's too late. Claire nodded slowly. And Lansing? He'll serve time. Not as much as Cross, but enough? Kowalski paused. For what it's worth, you did it. You brought them all down. Claire stared into her coffee. Doesn't feel like victory. Never does. Kowalski left. Claire sat there for a long time, turning the coffee cup in her hands. At 1900, Lynn came to get her. You've got another visitor. Who now? You'll want to see this one. Claire followed her to a small conference room. Inside, a man in his 50s stood by the window. He turned when she entered. Claire's breath caught. Colonel Davies? He smiled. It's General now, but yeah, it's me. Davies had been her commanding officer during her first deployment, the one who'd recommended her for rapid response, the one who'd written her commendation after Kandahar. What are you doing here? Claire asked. I heard what happened, Davies said. Flew in as soon as I could. I wanted to see if you were okay. Claire's throat tightened. I'm fine. Liar. Davies gestured to the chair. Sit. She sat. Davies sat across from her. You know, when I heard you'd been medically separated, I tried to find you. Wanted to make sure you landed somewhere good. But your file was sealed. I couldn't get through. It's a long story. I've got time. Claire shook her head. Not now. Davies studied her face. You look tired. I am. When's the last time you slept? Claire didn't answer. Davies sighed. I also heard about Colonel Hale's offer, the training program. I turned it down. I know. That's why I'm here. He leaned forward. Claire, you're one of the best medics I've ever seen. What you did in Kandahar, what you've been doing since, it's extraordinary. But you can't keep running on empty. At some point, you have to stop and deal with what happened. I have dealt with it. Have you? Claire looked away. Davies' voice softened. I'm not saying you have to take Hale's offer, but I'm saying you need to figure out what comes next. Because hiding in a civilian rotation, keeping your head down, pretending you're nobody, that's not living. That's surviving, and you deserve better. Claire's eyes burned. I don't know how to do anything else. Yes, you do. You proved that this week. Claire wiped her eyes quickly. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I know, but it did, and now you get to decide what it means. Davies stood. Think about it. And if you need anything at all, you call me. He handed her a card and left. Claire sat there, holding the card, staring at nothing. Her phone, newly replaced, buzzed. A text from Jenna Calloway. Cross just made bail. $5 million. Posted 20 minutes ago. Claire's blood went cold. She ran to find Hale. He was in his office on the phone. He saw her face and hung up immediately. Cross made bail, Claire said. I know, the judge said it higher than we expected, but his lawyers came through. Hale's expression was grim. We've got him under electronic monitoring. He's not going anywhere. You sure about that? Hale hesitated, just for a second. That was all Claire needed to know. She turned and walked out. Lynn caught up with her in the hallway. Where are you going? Nowhere. I just need air. Claire, I'm fine. She wasn't fine. She went back to her room, locked the door, and sat on the bed. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. You should have stayed quiet. Then a photo loaded. It was Claire, walking out of the black site earlier that day. Someone had been watching, still watching, and now Cross was free. Claire stared at the photo until her eyes burned. She didn't panic this time, didn't call for Lynn, didn't run. She just sat there, phone in hand, and let the cold settle into her bones. Whoever was sending these messages wanted her afraid, wanted her small, wanted her to disappear the way all the others had. She wasn't going to give them that. Claire stood up, grabbed her jacket, jacket, and walked out of the room. Lynn was posted outside, leaning against the wall, scrolling through her own phone. I need to leave, Claire said. Lynn straightened immediately. Not happening. I'm not asking. You're under protective custody. You don't get to just... Then arrest me, Claire said flatly, or get out of my way. Lynn stared at her, jaw tight, eyes searching Claire's face for something. Fear, maybe, or hesitation. She didn't find it. Lynn pulled out her radio. I need Colonel Hale. Now. 5 minutes later, Hale appeared at the end of the hallway, walking fast. His face already set in that expression that meant he knew exactly what was coming and didn't like it. He took one look at Claire's face and stopped 3 feet away. What's going on? Claire held up her phone, showed him the photo. The image of herself walking out of the black site, taken from an angle that suggested professional surveillance equipment, taken by someone who knew exactly where she was. Hale's expression darkened. He took the phone, studied the image for a long moment, zoomed in on the metadata, then handed it back. We'll trace it. You won't find anything. They've been doing this for days and you haven't found them yet. Claire's voice was calm, matter-of-fact. They're good. They're connected, and they're not going to stop. So what do you want to do? Walk out and make yourself an easier target? I want to stop hiding, Claire said. I want to go back to work. I want to live my life, and I want them to see that I'm not afraid anymore. Hale rubbed his face. the exhaustion showing through for the first time. He looked older than he had a week ago. They all did. Claire, Cross is out there. His people are still active. If you leave this facility, then they'll come after me, and you'll catch them. Claire's voice was steady, unwavering. But I'm not spending the rest of my life locked in a room waiting for someone else to fix this. I did that once, after Kandahar. I hid. I stayed quiet. I tried to disappear, and it almost killed me. Hale looked at Lynn. Lynn shrugged. She's right, Lynn said. If she stays here, she's a sitting duck anyway. At least out there we can use her as bait. I'm not using her as bait, Hale snapped. Then what's your plan? Claire asked. Keep me here until the trial? That could take months, maybe years. And in the meantime, what? I just stop existing, stop working, stop living? Hale was silent for a long moment. Then he let out a slow breath. If you leave, you go with full protection, armed escort, 24/7 surveillance, rotation shifts. And if I tell you to get down, you get down. No arguments, no heroics, no going off on your own. Fine. I mean it, Claire. You follow protocol or I lock you back up. And next time I won't ask nicely. Claire nodded. Understood. Hale didn't look happy, but he pulled out his phone and made a call. Get me a secure transport and a protection detail. 3-vehicle convoy, full tactical support. We're moving the package back to Ironvale. 30 minutes later, Claire was in the back of an armored SUV with Lynn and 2 federal agents she'd never met. They introduced themselves, Agent Ross and Agent Kim, but their faces were interchangeable, professional, blank. They drove in convoy formation, 3 vehicles rotating positions every 15 minutes, taking random routes through back roads and highways to avoid predictability. The trip back to Ironvale took 6 hours. By the time they arrived, it was past midnight. The streets were empty, the town dark except for scattered streetlights and the occasional gas station. Claire's apartment was still a crime scene, yellow tape across the door, evidence markers visible through the windows. So they took her to a safe house on the south side of town. The house was a nondescript ranch, beige siding, brown trim, completely forgettable. The kind of place you'd drive past 100 times and never remember. Inside, it was furnished like a rental property, generic couch, cheap coffee table, bare walls. No personality, no history. Lynn checked every room before letting Claire inside, sweeping for bugs, checking windows, testing locks. When she was satisfied, she nodded to the agents. Ross takes first watch. Kim relieves at 0600. I'll be upstairs with the package. Claire hated being called the package, but she didn't argue. Lynn pointed to the stairs. You're on the 2nd floor, bathrooms through there, kitchen stocked. Don't go near the windows. Don't answer the door. Don't leave without telling me first. Got it. So, Lynn hesitated at the base of the stairs. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Thanks. Lynn nodded and headed for the kitchen to set up her command post. Claire heard her radio crackle to life, heard the low murmur of tactical chatter, then tuned it out. She climbed the stairs, found the bedroom, and looked around. Twin bed, nightstand, lamp, nothing else. She sat down on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. She thought about the last time she'd felt safe. Really safe. Not just physically protected, but emotionally at peace. She couldn't remember. Maybe before Kandahar. Maybe never. Claire lay down on the bed fully clothed and closed her eyes. This time, she slept. She woke to sunlight streaming through the blinds and the smell of coffee drifting up from downstairs. Claire sat up, disoriented for a moment, then checked her phone. 800. She'd slept for 7 hours straight, the longest stretch in weeks, maybe months. She went downstairs. Lynn was at the kitchen table with a laptop and a cup of coffee, reviewing what looked like surveillance footage on a split screen. Morning, Lynn said without looking up. Morning. There's food in the fridge. Help yourself. Coffee's fresh. Claire poured herself a cup and sat down across from Lynn. The coffee was strong, bitter, exactly what she needed. What's the plan? You go back to work. I shadow you. 2 more agents rotate shifts outside the hospital. If anything happens, we respond immediately. Response time is under 90 seconds. And if nothing happens, then we wait. Lynn finally looked up, her eyes serious. But something's going to happen, Claire. Cross didn't post $5 million in bail just to sit at home. He's planning something. Claire drank her coffee and thought about that. Waiting. She'd spent her whole life waiting. Waiting to be noticed. Waiting to be believed. Waiting to be valued. Waiting for someone to care enough to do the right thing. She was done waiting. At 900, Claire walked into Ironvale Military Hospital for the first time in 5 days. The automatic doors slid open and she stepped into the familiar smell of antiseptic and floor wax. The lobby was busy, patients checking in, families waiting, staff moving purposefully through the corridors. Dolores looked up from the nurse's station and her eyes went wide. "Jesus Christ, you're alive!" "Barely." Dolores came around the desk and pulled Claire into a hug. It was awkward and unexpected, and Claire didn't know what to do with her hands. She stood there stiffly for a moment, then tentatively hugged back. "We thought," Dolores pulled back, wiping her eyes. "We didn't know where you were. Nobody would tell us anything. They said you were safe, but we kept seeing your face on the news, and people were saying all kinds of things. I'm sorry." "Don't be. Just don't disappear again, okay?" Claire nodded. "I'll try." She clocked in, grabbed her assignment sheet, disked up, and got to work. The ICU was busy. 2 new admissions overnight, 1 critical. A 57-year-old man post-cardiac surgery, stable but requiring close monitoring. An 18-year-old motorcycle accident victim with a traumatic brain injury, still unconscious. A woman in her 70s with sepsis, improving but fragile. Claire fell into the rhythm like she'd never left. Vitals, medications, assessments. The familiar routine steadied her, gave her something concrete to focus on. Numbers didn't lie. Monitors didn't judge. The work was clean, clear, measurable. Lynn stayed close but unobtrusive, positioned near the hallway with a clear line of sight to Claire at all times. She wore civilian clothes, jeans, plain shirt, light jacket that concealed her sidearm. To anyone else, she looked like a family member waiting for news. By noon, word had spread through the hospital. People stared, whispered. A resident Claire barely knew, a young guy named Patterson who always looked nervous, stopped her in the hallway. "I just wanted to say, what you did was brave." Claire didn't know how to respond. "I was just doing my job." "No, you did more than that. You stood up. That matters." He walked away before she could argue. The rest of the day passed without incident. No threats, no messages, no suspicious figures lurking in parking lots. Just work. Just the steady rhythm of saving lives and managing crises and doing the thing she was good at. At 1800, Claire clocked out. Lynn walked her to the safe house through the back parking lot, eyes constantly scanning, hand near her weapon. They drove separately. Claire in a hospital-provided sedan, Lynn following at a distance. 2 more vehicles bracketed them, maintaining a loose perimeter. Back at the safe house, they ate dinner in silence. Takeout Chinese that Lynn had ordered from a restaurant 3 towns over, paid for in cash. Delivered by an agent pretending to be a driver. The food tasted like cardboard, but Claire ate it anyway. She needed the calories. Needed the routine. She went to bed early, staring at the ceiling until exhaustion finally dragged her under. The next 3 days followed the same pattern. Work, surveillance, silence. On the 4th day, Hale called. "We've got movement," he said, voice tight. "Cross violated his bail conditions. Tried to leave the state. U.S. Marshals picked him up an hour ago at a private airfield outside Charlotte." Claire's pulse quickened. "Where is he now?" "Federal holding in Raleigh. They're filing for bail revocation. Judge is hearing it tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. "Can I be there?" Hale hesitated. "It's not a trial, just a hearing. You won't be testifying." "I don't care. I want to be there." Another pause. "I'll make it happen." "But Claire, this isn't going to be easy. His lawyers are going to fight hard. They'll argue he wasn't fleeing, that it was a misunderstanding, that he deserves another chance, and the judge might believe them. Or the judge might see through it. Maybe, but either way, you need to be prepared for disappointment." "I'm prepared," Claire said. "I've been disappointed before." The hearing was held in a federal courthouse 2 hours north of Ironvale. Claire rode up with Lynn and Hale in the early morning darkness, the sky still black, stars fading as the horizon began to lighten. They arrived at 7:30, passed through multiple security checkpoints, metal detectors, bag searches, ID verification. and took seats in the back of the courtroom. Cross was already there, sitting at the defense table with 3 lawyers in expensive suits. He looked smaller than Claire remembered. Tired. His silver hair was mussed, his suit wrinkled, his hands trembling slightly as he shuffled papers. He didn't look like a powerful general anymore. He looked like an old man who'd finally run out of options. He didn't look at her. The judge entered, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, an expression that suggested she'd seen every trick in the book and wasn't impressed by any of them. Everyone stood. "Be seated," the judge said. She looked at the prosecution table. "Counsel, you've filed a motion to revoke bail. Proceed." The prosecutor stood, a sharp-faced woman named Daniels with a reputation for being relentless. "Your Honor, the defendant was apprehended yesterday at 14:30 hours attempting to board a private flight to Mexico. He had $200,000 in cash, falsified travel documents, and no intention of returning for trial. This represents a clear and immediate flight risk." One of Cross's lawyers shot to his feet, a tall man with slicked back hair and a voice like oil. "Your Honor, my client was not fleeing. He was attending to urgent business matters related to his consulting firm, which operates internationally. The cash was for legitimate business expenses, and the travel documents were prepared by his staff without his knowledge of any irregularities." "In Mexico," Daniels interrupted, not raising her voice but cutting through the lawyer's explanation like a scalpel. "Without notifying this court, without seeking permission from his bail supervisor, in direct violation of the conditions set forth when bail was granted." The judge held up a hand. "I've read the motion. I've reviewed the evidence. General Cross, do you have anything to say before I rule?" Cross stood slowly. His lawyers tried to stop him, grabbing his arm, whispering urgently, but he shook them off. He stood there for a moment, staring at the bench, and Claire could see the calculation happening behind his eyes. The weighing of options, the search for an angle. Then his shoulders sagged. "No, Your Honor," he said quietly. "I have nothing to say." The judge nodded. "Bail is revoked. The defendant will be remanded to federal custody pending trial. Bailiffs." 2 uniformed officers moved forward immediately. Cross's lawyers erupted, voices overlapping, objections flying, but the judge ignored them. The bailiffs cuffed Cross's hands behind his back with practiced efficiency and led him toward the side door. As he passed Claire's row, he stopped. The bailiffs tried to keep him moving, but Cross planted his feet and looked directly at her. His eyes were empty, hollow. All the arrogance, all the power, all the certainty that had defined his career, gone. Just a shell of a man staring at the person who'd brought him down. "I hope it was worth it," he said quietly. Claire met his gaze without flinching. It was. The bailiffs pulled him away, and this time he didn't resist. The door closed behind him with a heavy thud that echoed through the courtroom. Claire sat there, watching the door, and felt something shift inside her chest. Not relief, not satisfaction, not even vindication. Just closure. The end of one chapter. The possibility of another beginning. Hale leaned over. "You okay?" "Yeah," Claire said. "I am." They left the courthouse and drove back to Ironvale. The sun was high now, burning through the morning haze, turning the fields golden. Claire watched the landscape roll past and thought about everything that had led to this moment. The slap, the file, the salutes, the investigation, the threats, the fear. All of it had started because she'd refused to be invisible. And now Cross was in a cell. Lansing was awaiting sentencing. The network was collapsing, one arrest at a time. But it still didn't feel finished. Back at the safe house, Claire found Jenna Calloway waiting on the front steps, camera bag slung over one shoulder, notebook in hand. Lynn moved immediately to intercept, hand going to her weapon. "Ma'am, this is a restricted area." "It's okay," Claire said, stepping forward. "I know her." Lynn didn't look happy, but she stepped back, positioning herself where she could intervene if needed. Jenna stood, holding up her hands to show they were empty. "I heard about the hearing. Thought you might want to talk." "Off the record?" "If that's what you want." Claire sat down on the steps. Jenna sat beside her, careful to keep some distance, to not crowd her space. "How does it feel?" Jenna asked. "Watching them fall." Claire was quiet for a moment, staring at the street. A car drove past, slow, the driver rubbernecking. Lynn tracked it until it disappeared around the corner. "Empty," Claire said finally. Really? I didn't do this for revenge. I just wanted them to stop. I wanted to be able to go to work without being afraid, without being targeted, without having to prove I had a right to exist in that space. And now they have stopped. Have they? Claire looked at her. Cross is locked up. Lansing's going to prison. But there are others, people who look the other way, people who knew and didn't care, people who benefited from the system they built. They're still out there, still in positions of power. Jenna nodded slowly, making a note. So what are you going to do about it? Claire didn't have an answer to that. She stared at the horizon, at the line where the earth met the sky, and tried to imagine what came next. Jenna flipped open her notebook, pulled out a folded piece of paper, and handed it to Claire. I've been talking to some of the other victims. Daniels, Reeves, Webb, Marcus from the 82nd, about 15 others. They want to form a support network, help others who've been through similar situations, provide resources, legal support, counseling. They asked if you'd be willing to speak at their first meeting. Claire unfolded the paper. It was a flyer, simple, professionally designed. Survivors Speak, a support network for military personnel. First meeting, next Thursday, 7 p.m., Ironvale Community Center. I'm not a speaker, Claire said. You don't have to be. Just tell your story. Let people see that it's possible to fight back and win. Jenna paused. A lot of people are watching you, Claire, waiting to see what you do next. If you walk away now, they'll think fighting back doesn't matter, that the system always wins. The system did win, for years, decades, until you. Claire stared at the flyer. When is it? Next week, Thursday, 7 p.m. Claire folded the paper carefully and put it in her pocket. I'll think about it. Jenna stood, slinging her bag over her shoulder. That's all I can ask. She left, walking down the street to where her car was parked. Lynn watched her go, then turned to Claire. You really thinking about doing it? Lynn asked. I don't know. For what it's worth, I think you should. Claire glanced at her. Why? Because people need to hear it. Not from the news, not from lawyers or investigators or press conferences. From you. From someone who lived it and came out the other side. Lynn paused, choosing her words carefully. You showed them that silence isn't strength, that fighting back is possible, that you don't have to accept being treated like you don't matter. Claire thought about that for a long time, sitting on those steps as the afternoon stretched into evening. The next day, she called Jenna and said yes. The week passed in a blur. Work during the day, patients, assessments, medications, the steady rhythm that kept her grounded. Preparation at night, writing notes, throwing them away, writing new ones. She practiced in front of the bathroom mirror and hated every word that came out of her mouth. She sounded stilted, rehearsed, fake. Lynn heard her practicing and knocked on the door. Stop trying to sound like someone else, Lynn said. Just be yourself. That's what people need to see. Myself isn't very inspiring. Yourself took down a general and exposed a network of corruption that had been operating for years. I'd say that's pretty damn inspiring. The night of the meeting, Claire almost didn't go. She stood in front of the mirror adjusting her shirt for the 10th time and felt her chest tighten. Her hands were shaking, her breathing was shallow, the familiar signs of a panic attack creeping in. Lynn appeared in the doorway. You don't have to do this. I know. But you're going to anyway. Claire turned away from the mirror. Yeah. Lynn drove her to the community center in silence. The parking lot was packed, cars spilling out onto the street, people streaming toward the entrance. Claire stared at all those people and felt her chest tighten further. There's too many, she said. There's exactly as many as there should be, Lynn said. They're here because of you, because you gave them hope. Claire opened the door and got out before she could change her mind. Inside, the meeting room was filled to capacity. 60 people, maybe more. Some in uniform, some in civilian clothes, some with children. All of them watching as Claire walked to the front. Amy Reeves was there, sitting in the second row. She smiled encouragingly, her eyes wet. Marcus Webb stood near the back, arms crossed, eyes steady. He nodded once. Daniels, the corporal who'd been working at a gas station in Alabama, sat up front with his 2 kids, a boy and a girl, both under 10. The boy was playing with a toy car. The girl was staring at Claire with wide, curious eyes. Claire stepped up to the microphone and looked out at all those faces. Her hands were shaking so badly she had to grip the podium to keep them still. "I'm not good at this," she started. Her voice sounded too loud in the quiet room, too raw, too real. "I'm not a speaker. I'm not a leader. I'm not someone who stands in front of crowds and gives inspiring speeches. I'm just a nurse, someone who wanted to do her job and be left alone." She paused, swallowed hard, forced herself to keep going. "But I couldn't be left alone, because people like Major Lansing and General Cross, they don't leave you alone. They push. They intimidate. They make you feel small until you believe you are small, until you stop fighting back, until you convince yourself that keeping quiet is the same thing as staying safe." The room was silent. Claire could hear her own heartbeat, loud in her ears. "For a long time, I believed them. I thought if I kept my head down, if I stayed quiet, if I didn't make waves, they'd leave me alone. But they didn't. They never do. Because silence isn't protection. It's permission. Permission to keep hurting you. Permission to move on to the next person. Permission to build a system where abuse is normal and speaking up is the exception." Her voice steadied, growing stronger. "I'm not here to tell you that fighting back is easy. It's not. It's terrifying. It's exhausting. You lose sleep. You lose safety. You lose the life you thought you had. People you trusted turn against you. The system you believed in tries to crush you. And there are days, so many days, when you wonder if it's worth it. If you should just give up and disappear." She looked out at the crowd, meeting their eyes. "But you know what you gain?" She let the question hang in the air. "You gain yourself back, your voice, your power, your dignity. The knowledge that you're not a victim, you're a survivor, and survivors don't stay quiet. Survivors speak up, survivors fight back, survivors refuse to let the people who hurt them define who they are." Someone in the back started clapping, then someone else. Then the whole room erupted. Claire stood there, overwhelmed, as the applause washed over her like a wave. She'd expected polite appreciation, maybe some nods of agreement. Not this. Not people on their feet, tears streaming down their faces, clapping like she'd just saved their lives. Maybe, in a way, she had. When the applause finally quieted, Amy Reeves stood up. "Thank you," Reeves said, her voice thick with emotion. "For starting this. For showing us it's possible. For being brave when the rest of us were too scared." Claire shook her head. "I didn't start anything. You all did. By refusing to give up. By coming forward even when it was hard. By standing together instead of staying isolated." She looked around the room, at all those faces, young and old, male and female, different ranks and different stories, but all connected by the same thread of pain and survival. That's the only way this works. Not one person fighting alone, but all of us fighting together, supporting each other, sharing resources, refusing to let them bury us one at a time. The meeting lasted another 3 hours. People shared their stories, haltingly at first, then with growing confidence. A captain who'd been passed over for promotion after reporting sexual harassment. A staff sergeant who'd been discharged on false charges after questioning illegal orders. A young private who'd attempted suicide after months of targeted abuse. They cried. They laughed. They made plans, legal funds, counseling resources, a hotline for people in crisis. By the time it ended, Claire felt lighter than she had in years, like she'd been carrying a weight she didn't know was there, and someone had finally helped her set it down. Outside, Lynn was waiting by the car, scanning the parking lot with the practiced eye of someone who'd spent too many years watching for threats. "You did good in there," Lynn said. "Thanks." They drove back to the safe house in comfortable silence. When they arrived, Hale's car was parked out front, headlights off, engine running. He got out when he saw them, holding a folder under one arm. Claire felt her stomach tighten. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." Hale walked over, held out the folder. "This came through today. Thought you'd want to see it." Claire opened the folder. It was a letter from the Secretary of the Army. Official letterhead. Formal language. In recognition of extraordinary service and sacrifice during active deployment, and an acknowledgement of subsequent actions that have upheld the highest standards of military integrity and valor. Claire Whitmore is hereby reinstated to active duty with full honors and all privileges, promoted to the rank of captain, effective immediately. Assigned to develop and lead a new rapid response medical training program designed to set the standard for combat medical care and personnel protection. Claire's hands started shaking. She read it again, then a third time. "They want you back," Hale said quietly, "not just as an instructor, as a leader, building something new from the ground up, setting the standard for how we train medics, how we protect them, how we make sure what happened to you and to all the others never happens again." Claire looked up at him, eyes wet. "I don't know if I can." "You can? I've seen it. Everyone has." Hale's expression softened. "But it's your choice. No pressure, no expectations. No one's going to be disappointed if you say no. You've already done more than anyone had a right to ask." Claire stared at the letter, at the words that represented everything she'd lost and everything she might gain back. Then she thought about the faces in that meeting room, the people who'd come forward because she had, the lives that had changed because someone finally said enough, the young medics who'd graduate from the program she'd build, armed not just with medical skills, but with the knowledge that they had a right to speak up, to be safe, to demand better. She thought about Kandahar, about the building that came down, about the people she'd saved and the ones she'd lost and the version of herself that had died in that rubble. She thought about the slap, the file, the salutes, the moment she'd decided to stop being invisible. "Can I think about it?" she asked. "Take all the time you need," Hale said. "But Claire, the offer expires in 2 weeks. After that, they'll move forward with someone else." He got back in his car and drove away. Claire went inside, sat at the kitchen table, and read the letter 5 more times. Lynn made coffee and set a cup in front of her without saying anything. "What would you do?" Claire asked finally. Lynn sat down across from her. "Doesn't matter what I do. This is your life, your decision." "But if it was you," Lynn was quiet for a long moment. "I'd be scared. I'd doubt myself. I'd make a list of all the reasons I couldn't do it, but then I'd remember why they asked me in the first place, and I'd do it anyway." Claire nodded slowly. Then she pulled out her phone and called Colonel Davies. He answered on the second ring, voice rough with sleep. "Claire? It's almost midnight. I know, I'm sorry, I need advice." "Shoot." "They offered me a position, active duty, captain, leading a new training program for combat medics." There was a pause. Then Davies' voice came back warmer, more awake. "That's incredible. I don't know if I'm ready." "You're never going to feel ready, not for something like this. But that doesn't mean you're not capable. It just means you're smart enough to know how hard it's going to be." Davies paused. "Can I tell you something?" "Yeah. After you left, after your file was sealed and you disappeared, I kept thinking about you, about how many lives you saved, about how you went back into that building when everyone else was running out. And I kept thinking, what a waste. All that skill, all that courage, all that dedication, just gone." Claire's throat tightened. "But now you have a chance to get it back. Not the same way. Not in combat, but in a way that might matter even more. Training the next generation. Making sure they're better prepared, better protected, better equipped to survive. Making sure they know they have a voice." Davies' voice grew firmer. "Don't let fear talk you out of this, Claire. You've already proven you're brave enough. Now prove you're strong enough to come back." Claire closed her eyes, felt tears slip down her cheeks. "What if I fail?" "Then you fail, and you get back up. Same as you always have, same as you did in Kandahar, same as you did when Lansing hit you." He paused. "But I don't think you will. I think you're going to do something amazing, because that's who you are." "Thank you," Claire whispered. "Anytime. Now get some sleep. You've got a decision to make." He hung up. Claire sat in the silence for a long time, phone still pressed to her ear even though the line was dead. Then she picked up a pen and wrote 3 words on the letter. "I accept. C. Whitmore." She stared at her signature for a moment, then folded the letter and put it in an envelope. The next morning, Claire walked into Colonel Hale's office and handed him the signed letter. Hale read it, looked up at her, and smiled, a genuine smile, the first she'd seen from him. "Welcome back, Captain." "Thank you, sir." "When can you start?" "Give me 2 weeks. I need to finish my notice at the hospital. I owe them that much." "Done. Report to Fort Bragg on the 15th. I'll have your orders waiting." Claire left his office and drove to Ironvale Military Hospital one last time as a civilian. Dolores was at the nurses' station updating a chart. She looked up when Claire approached, and something in Claire's expression made her set down her pen. "You're leaving, aren't you?" Claire nodded. 2 weeks. Where are you going? Back. Active duty. They're putting me in charge of a new training program. Dolores's eyes filled with tears. Good. You belong there. You always did. I don't know about that. I do. Dolores stood up and came around the desk. You're going to do great things, Whitmore. I know it. And when you do, remember us little people back here in the ICU who knew you when you were just a quiet nurse nobody paid attention to. I could never forget this place. Dolores hugged her tight. You better not. Claire spent her last 2 weeks saying goodbye. To patients who'd come to trust her steady hands and quiet competence. To co-workers who'd watched her transform from invisible to unforgettable. To a version of herself that had tried so hard to disappear and failed so spectacularly. On her final day, she clocked out for the last time and stood in the parking lot, looking back at the building where everything had changed. So much had happened here, so much pain, so much growth, so much fear and courage and transformation. She got in her car and drove away without looking back. 3 months later, Captain Claire Whitmore stood in front of a classroom at Fort Bragg, facing 30 young medics fresh out of training. They looked so young, so eager, so ready to save the world. She'd looked like that once, before Kandahar taught her that saving the world meant saving one person at a time, over and over, until your body broke and your mind fractured and you had to decide whether to keep going or give up. She'd kept going. I'm not here to teach you how to save lives, Claire said, her voice carrying across the room. You already know that. The technical skills, the protocols, the procedures, you learned all of that in your training. I'm here to teach you something else. How to protect yourselves. How to speak up when something's wrong. How to refuse to be silenced when someone tries to make you small. She paused, looking at their faces. Some eager, some skeptical, some already carrying wounds she couldn't see. Because the worst thing that can happen to you out there isn't failing to save someone. It's letting fear stop you from trying. It's letting someone convince you that your voice doesn't matter, that speaking up will only make things worse, that silence is the same thing as safety. The class was silent, hanging on every word. You're going to see things that break you. You're going to face people who try to make you small. People in positions of power who abuse that power because they can. Because the system protects them. Because silence has always been easier than accountability. And when that happens, you have a choice. Stay silent and let them win, or stand up and fight back. Claire walked to the front of the room, hands clasped behind her back in a posture that was pure military, but somehow softer, more accessible. I spent years being invisible, telling myself it was safer that way. Easier. That if I just kept my head down and did my job, I'd be fine. But all it did was make me smaller and smaller until I almost disappeared completely. Until one day, I couldn't get any smaller. And I had to decide, stay hidden and lose myself completely, or stand up and fight for the right to exist. She looked each of them in the eye, one by one. I stood up, and it cost me everything, my safety, my peace, my old life. I was threatened, stalked, attacked. I lost sleep. I lost friends. I lost the comfortable illusion that the system would protect me if I just followed the rules. She paused, let that sink in. You know what I got in return? She smiled, and it was real, genuine, hard-won. I got myself back. My voice. My power. My right to take up space in the world without apologizing for it. And I got something else too. I got all of you. The next generation. The ones who are going to do better than we did. Who are going to build a better system. Who are going to refuse to accept that abuse is just part of the job. The room erupted in applause. After class, a young corporal approached her, a woman who couldn't be more than 20, with nervous eyes and a story Claire knew she was working up the courage to tell. Captain Whitmore? Yeah? I just wanted to say thank you for what you did. My sister was in the Army. She was harassed by her commanding officer for months. She reported it 3 times and nothing happened. Eventually, she just gave up, took a discharge. She's been struggling ever since. The corporal's voice cracked. But after she heard your story, after she saw that someone actually fought back and won, she started going to therapy again, started dealing with it instead of just trying to forget. She's even thinking about coming back, maybe as a contractor or a civilian trainer. She said you gave her hope. Claire's chest tightened. I'm glad she's getting help. Can I ask you something? Sure. The corporal hesitated, choosing her words carefully. Was it worth it? Everything you went through? The fear and the threats and having your whole life turned upside down? Claire thought about that. About the slap that echoed across the parade ground. About the threats that came in the middle of the night. About the fear that had followed her like a shadow. About Cross being led away in handcuffs. About Lansing's career ending in disgrace. About the network collapsing one arrest at a time. She thought about the faces in that community center. About the support group that now had over 300 members. About the people who'd found their voices because she'd found hers first. She thought about standing in this classroom, teaching these young medics not just how to save lives, but how to protect their own souls in the process. Yeah, Claire said. It was worth it. Every single second. That night, Claire sat in her small office at the training facility, reviewing lesson plans for the next week. Her phone buzzed. A text from Amy Reeves. Just wanted to say thank you for everything. The support group hit 400 members yesterday. We're opening chapters in 3 more states. People are healing, lives are changing because of you. Claire stared at the message, her eyes burning with the kind of tears that came from exhaustion and gratitude and the overwhelming weight of knowing that something good had come from all that pain. She typed back slowly. Not because of me, because we refused to stay silent, because we stood together. That's the only reason any of this worked. She set the phone down and looked out the window. The base was quiet, lights glowing in the gathering darkness. Somewhere out there, in bases and hospitals and offices across the country, people were fighting their own battles, facing their own Lansings, their own systems built on silence and fear, and the assumption that some people mattered more than others. And maybe, just maybe, some of them would remember that one person had stood up, one person had said no, one person had refused to be small, and that one person had won. Not because she was special, not because she was fearless, not because she was stronger or braver or better than anyone else, but because she'd reached a point where staying silent hurt more than speaking up, and because when she spoke up, other people joined her. That was the lesson. That was what she needed these young medics to understand. You don't have to be perfect to fight back. You don't have to be fearless. You just have to be tired of being afraid. Claire closed her laptop, turned off the lights, and walked out into the night. She wasn't invisible anymore. She wasn't a victim. She wasn't someone who stayed quiet to keep the peace. She was Captain Claire Whitmore, combat medic, survivor, teacher, leader, and she was just getting started.